Super quick intro. Many people will have seen the previous videos to this one, and I don't want to bore them by repeating myself, so I'm not going to say anything about how these pieces of dungeon terrain were made, or why I designed them in this way, nor how this kind of terrain is used. I've covered that already. Find links in the description and possibly appearing on your screen. Right, let's get on with this. And here we have what looks like a plain rectangular room, or so it would look on your map. But when the players are presented with the model of it, they see that it has an interesting barrel-vaulted ceiling, which is of course an architecturally sound detail, because if you're building underground, you really want a barrel vault, otherwise everything's going to collapse. And it is normal for the entrance of such a room to be in the center of one end. And you can see that I made the mistake again of making it arched, so I had to make this sort of hinge so that it would open properly. But at least you can see that the diagonal strut supporting it is the correct way round on that side. And on the other side, yes, I've managed to get it the wrong way round. But in my defense, I have seen in the real world doors that have been incorrectly installed with it that way round. And hilariously, yes, they have often dropped. But there is a problem here. If I get my ordinary clip-on entrance, be it a doorway or an archway, and try to add that to the barrel vault, yeah, that's not really working at all. So I created this sort of door, which just sits on a tile, just an L-shaped thing, and that can go like that. This sort of door will get you out of a few other fixes. It's not just barrel vaults. Sometimes the clip-ons, there just isn't room for them for whatever reason. So a few of these, quite handy. And if you're going to do barrel vaults, why not really go for it? So this one has quite a lot of arches that go all the way across, supporting what otherwise would be a dangerously wide span that might collapse under its weight. And you've got the suggestion of a barrel vaulted high central bit here. And you've got these pillars, which suggest, they could suggest a number of things. It could be that there are loads of wooden beams that go across here, but we've removed those so that we can see what we're doing. Or perhaps there's a lesser arch that goes between these pillars. You decide. But it's got an entranceway at one end with a proper lintel so that it doesn't collapse. And just think of the tactical possibilities here. If you have a fight in this room, you're not just exposed to every arrow. You've got cover. Everyone's got cover, attackers and defenders alike. They can be running around, capturing this bit, not noticing things. You've got an excuse for why they didn't notice the lever, because it was on the other side of a thing, or there were lots of shadows. I just think this is a more interesting space to have an adventure in than just a big rectangular room. And why stop there? Why not 3 lots of barrel vaults across a wide space, all connected by these series of arches going across the center? You see, the tactical possibilities here are just boundless, so much more interesting than an empty room. But if you really want the boring space, I've made them removable. You see, they just sit in these slots either end, and yes, I've made some replacement little column pillory bits which can go into those slots, filling them up, and thus not leaving an unsightly gap that your players might complain about. Because you know what players can be like. But come on, which looks more interesting here? Lots of cover, lots of interest, lots of shadows, or a big, wide, open space? Yeah, all right, a big, wide, open space is sometimes a little bit easier to manage, but come on! But if you really insist on a huge, plain rectangular room, why not make the whole thing one enormous barrel vault? And as you can see, I've put a second layer here, so there's an overhang here, which I just think suggests the vault even more strongly. The sidewall here does curve over, but something went wrong, and I got the degree of curvature wrong on my cutting machine, and it doesn't look great, but it just gives you the idea. And I haven't painted it yet, but you can see that I haven't textured it with the rolling pins. There are no flagstones or cobbles, but I have marked on the suggestion of a grid. My plan is to texture this for a big dirt floor. I might use baking soda and glue or something like that, just to give it a rough earthen floor look. And it's got doors at both ends, and yes, look, the strut, it goes the right way. This bit is, I hope, more interesting than most. Again, there's a suggestion of a barrel vault here. Can you see that the upper part of the ceiling here is curving inwards? And then you've got this, which is a support for a shelf of some sort. And yes, these are meant to be, well, bunk beds was my first idea. So I'm going to be making out of wooden coffee stirrer sticks the platforms to go across. So there's a lower bunk and there's an upper bunk. And they could also be shelving units for storage. And you'll notice the metallic glint here of a couple of magnets. So my initial idea was to make it just 5 feet wide. I was thinking of the beds that you might find in the compartment train. Now, of course, in a compartment train, the central passage is not normally 5 feet wide. It's more like 2.5 feet wide. But can you see the problem already? This is really quite narrow, so it's difficult to see what's going on in there. And if you've got figures and things on the shelves, it's going to be very difficult to get your fingers in there, and people are going to be craning their necks and wondering what on earth is going on. But this is actually for atmosphere and for architectural verisimilitude, this is the better proportion. So a cheap way of housing your garrison underground would be to just put bunk beds in the wall. So just in a corridor, there would be, well, there are 8 on that side, 8 on that side. So this would be 16 guards in this section of corridor. It's sort of, I like the meanness of it. I like the frugality of it. It's not pleasant down in this dungeon. It's not a great place to live at all. But 5 feet is just not very wide. So I also made a 10-foot wide section, which does the same job. But now it's so much easier to see what's going on. I think you'll agree. But I thought, why stop there? Why not make more things that can attach to these? So if you can imagine a big storage room, the end walls of which are shelving units, well, there you go. And you could have more shelving units freestanding in the middle of the room. And this central piece here, you see, it just has 2 walls, but actually this is quite a useful thing. I can put it between an awful lot of other things in the world, and it'll make perfect sense. So you don't actually need 4 walls on every single room. You can get away with a few with just 2 or 3 walls. And there you go, there's one of them. And it's magnetized, and so I can put the shelving units on. And if I really wanted to, I could add a wider open space like that. So there you go, the bunk beds of Quag. I designed these first on a computer, as you see here, using Google SketchUp. And once I was satisfied with the design on the computer, I then transferred the measurements from the design to, if you like, the real physical 3D world. And to cut the profile, I cut a piece of card to exactly the profile that I wanted and used that as a wire cutting guide. So there you go. Quite a nice result. I'm happy with that so far. Of course, I haven't put the shelves in yet, so there's still time for me to muck it up.
Come back in here. There's some serious drinking to be done. I'm telling you, I'm sure I heard something. Well, it's just that stupid wobbly staircase, isn't it? Wobbling all over the place, making out of a racket. You know how it is. Come back in here. We'll drink all your beer if you don't mind.
Yeah, very funny.
We're drinking your beer.
Josh, will you?
You keep to yourself.
There it is again! There's definitely something out here. A mystery room. What could this unfinished room possibly be? So we have stairs going down here to a little platform, and the platform is next to a big square hole. And on this side we have a ramp going down to an archway exit. Well, this is another thing which I have designed on a computer, and here's a clue. I also made this cage, coffee stirrer sticks and string and cocktail sticks and lots of stiffening glue. And just for gratuitous detail, I even made this door openable. So the player characters can get into this cage, and then they can close the door behind them, and then the lifting or lowering mechanism, which will go here, will then lower them down the lift shaft to who knows where, and then they'll have to get back to that platform and then perhaps fight their way back up to this room. Now, the people who have built this lift will use it presumably fairly often and they want to be safe about it. So the design will have ratchets in it to stop it suddenly running away and falling down into doom. It'll be wound up with a treadmill, and in time I will add a barrier across here, a wall, to stop people, it might be wooden, from falling unnecessarily to their harm on the ramp. The ramp will be used to roll barrels down perhaps, or whatever they've brought up from down here that's big and heavy. Perhaps they'll load up sacks onto wheelbarrows and they'll go down to wherever this leads. So I reckon if you have an underground space, it's very likely that you're going to want a lift. If there are lots of deep places down there, rather than spending years and years and years building huge dungeon levels that go down and down and down with hundreds of rooms each, why not just a long shaft that takes you down there? So will you dare go down into the deep, deep depths of the chasms of Quag? Some of you may be curious to know how I made some of the fancy metal hinges on these doors. I wanted to use fancy curly watch hands, but in Britain at least they're only available in pairs and it becomes prohibitively expensive. So I made my own. They're just a thin sheet of foam, and then I got one of these, and then I punched big hole, little hole, slice, slice, dip, 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 done. And that's how I did the big ones, and the smaller ones, just 2 little holes, snip, snip, and you're done. One day I found myself musing about the dungeon entrance. Perhaps the dungeon entrance would be extremely well fortified, so that people living behind the security of that entrance could be relaxed. A bit like we today, we have strong outer windows with catches on them, and we have burglar alarms that are set off when people try to get into our home, and we have big, strong front doors with perhaps 3 locks on, so that no one can get in. But once in, we don't bother locking our internal doors in the house. No, we're quite relaxed because we feel that we've done enough to keep people out. So perhaps the dungeon entrance would look something like this. You come into this room, which has no doors out of it. You come into this room and you are overlooked by guards in this room here, who look down at you through these arrow slits here, or perhaps through this little hatchway in the middle of this small door. And if they don't like the look of you, they might drop things through these murder holes or shoot things down at you through these arrow slits. But if they decide that you do deserve passage into the greater dungeon, well, then they can open this door here and then lower a ladder to you, and you can climb up one at a time and then be searched in this room. And if you've got weapons on you, woe betide, you're not going anywhere, mate, not with those weapons. And why were you trying to bring those weapons in here without declaring them? All right, okay, off to prison with you, mate. And but if you pass the test, then you can go down these stairs here into the rest of the dungeon. So here we can see the murder holes on the diagonal going down like that, and the arrow slits which go down right down to the very floor and are angled downwards. There is also a thick beam with an eye in it, and so if people have brought into this room a lot of heavy stuff that needs hoisting up, well, that can be done. You don't have to climb a ladder with the wheelbarrow full of sacks. You can bring up the sacks one at a time on the hoist. I have 2 suggestions for how you might use this sort of kit to design a layout. The first would be to decide first on what the crux of your story is. What will serve the story? Is the entrance going to be very difficult to get into, very easy to get into? How many choices do you want your players to have? Too many choices can spoil the story, but too few and they may feel railroaded. So you may decide, well, I want a very simple entrance that they just walk in through a big door, and I'm going to tell them in advance of one choice they're going to have to make very early on. They could ask the people in there, oh, could you show us through this door? Or we need to go to that door. And once we've killed the guards or the sentries, we've got to make our way through that quickly and get to the really big room there we go. So I'll put in a path to a really big complicated room, and they expect it not having exits, but in fact it's got several exits. And if they go through to this one, then there'll be guards in there which they weren't expecting, and there's a door which leads through here into this room. This is really where they were trying to get. Yes, so they thought that they should go that way, but actually if they went this way, it would be much easier. So a very simple connector through there, and so forth. And right, so you've got a layout that suits your story, and then you draw the map to the layout so that the map will match your layout absolutely 100%, and everything will be perfect. And on the map you can note down the particular rooms you've used to construct that map so that it's extra quick. So you'll be able to plonk things down on the table and the game carries on. Or you could go the other way, draw the map first and then just approximate. Perhaps you've bought a professionally produced scenario and the first room is meant to be square, but the square room's over there. Never mind. If it's not material to the story, use an L-shaped room, plonk it down, and then just keep going with whatever serves the story. If there's a big room here, fine, it's a big room. It doesn't have to be specifically to exactly the same size that they have it in the scenario. Probably. Look at the map and decide, is there anything on this published map, or this map that I have just drawn, that absolutely requires very precisely this layout, and then model that bit very carefully, but otherwise just bung down an approximation and get on with it. Now you may be wondering how much material you need to make a layout like this. Well, everything you can see here, the square room at the front, all the doors that you'll see in this entire layout, the fortified entrance room, the little connecting corridor, those two rooms that I've stacked on top of each other, more connecting corridors, the L-shaped room, the big barrel vaulted room, the dormitory corridor thing, that L-shaped room, that lot of cells plus the passages next to it, that fancy up and down staircase, that small barrel vaulted room, that L-shaped room, that really big barrel vaulted room with the removable arches, this smaller barrel vaulted room with non-removable arches, more cells and the little wall thing there, whatever that room is, the pool room, this connecting corridor, this fancy staircase, more connecting corridors, and this underground canal entrance. I got all of this. That's about 16 rooms, depending on how you count it, and all the connecting bits you need, from one sheet this big. It's 4 foot by 2 foot by 1 inch, which in metric is about this big. And don't forget that the walls and floors are ½ an inch thick, so this gets split that way. So you get, if you like, double the area to work with. Plus, I've got here a big bag of the offcuts, the leftovers after I'd used that sheet. Here we see a couple of the hot wire cutting templates that I kept. This one for the corridor dormitory thing. You see there's the cutout there, there's the support for the shelf and the curving roof, and this is one of the pillars in the rooms with many arches. And here are those templates for those big arches. Handy if I ever need to make more arches. More arch templates. There's a bit, could come in handy one day, you never know. You end up with loads of offcuts like this. That could be one of 1,000 things. Every time you cut out an archway, you get the arch bit, which you could eventually make a thing out of. After using that template to cut out the recesses in the dormitory corridor, then you get these bits, which I could slice that way and use them as corbels along the top of a wall for holding up the room above. I ended up with these two bits, which could be a flying buttress, or one end of a bridge, or half of a broken bridge, or the remaining bit of a broken bridge, or a ramp for loading barrels up into a barn. I don't know. It's an interesting shape. Anything cuboid is likely to be handy. Keep the lot, waste not, want not. Oh, the precious things! Don't worry, Tubbs. We haven't used a thing.